Delighted to say I've got regular guest Ben Habib back on the channel. Ben, how are you, sir?
Very well indeed, thanks, Michael. How are you?
I'm great, and as ever, Ben, you've always got a lot to say, great insight when it comes to the situation with Brexit. I just want to ask you about this latest article I've seen you've written for Brexit Watch, entitled, "Is Boris Johnson Becoming Boris Chamberlain?" I'll put the article up on the screen, Ben, but for those who haven't read it, what's the thrust of your argument?
Well, the thrust of the argument is that what we've now got is a prime minister who has allowed another annexation to take place in Europe, an annexation by a supranational European institution, but it's not an annexation of a country in Eastern Europe. It's an annexation of part of the United Kingdom. And we've seen that. That was obvious, Michael, to you and me, that the Northern Irish Protocol left Northern Ireland behind. But we've now seen it in operation. We've seen the fact that we can't get goods from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. We've seen the fact we can't even get pets from Great Britain into Northern Ireland. And when Michael Gove, in his timidity, asked for extensions of grace periods, which, by the way, do not address the problem because we've already got grace periods running on trade between GB and NI. When he asked for that, the response that Sefcovic gave him, the vice president of the commission, gave him, his counterpart on the joint committee for the Northern Irish Protocol, the response he got from Sefcovic was effectively two fingers. It was, no, we're not going to give you any extension of the grace periods. And, well, you can take your pets across the Irish Sea if you want, but the entire United Kingdom will have to comply with EU regulations for you to take your pooch from GB to Belfast. I mean, you couldn't make it up. And then Sefcovic went on to say, in a really haughty manner, the kind of manner that only an occupying force would use, that, we want full access to your IT systems. They want full access to British government IT systems. He's not specific on which ones he wants, and I imagine it's to do with the border checks and so on. But who the hell are the European Union to be demanding these things of the UK?
Now, Ben, we've seen the petition from DUP leader and First Minister of Northern Ireland, Arlene Foster, about triggering Article 16. What's your view on that? What's your view on what the British government and Boris should be doing?
Well, I completely support Arlene. I think we must trigger Article 16. Boris Johnson, in typical Boris Johnson style, has threatened to do it, and he will do it if the EU don't behave. But we've seen scant action, and he needs to stop talking and he needs to do some walking. And we need to invoke it. The Northern Irish Protocol is a clear breach of the Belfast Agreement. I just want to dwell on that a second. The Belfast Agreement states quite clearly that there is a border on the island of Ireland. The notion that there shouldn't be a border there coming out of the Belfast Agreement is just nonsense. It also states that any new constitutional arrangement for Northern Ireland has to be put to the vote in Northern Ireland. And of course, the Northern Irish Protocol, which is a completely new constitutional setup for Northern Ireland, wasn't put to the people. So it breaches the Belfast Agreement. And it is absolutely right now that, given that that protocol is causing economic hardship, and given that it's been revealed for being the pernicious document that it is, that we, the United Kingdom, invoke Article 16, and we had the grounds to do it, which effectively allows us to suspend the protocol. And we should suspend it, but we should suspend it permanently. It isn't working. And we need our government to recognize the facts and do the right thing by the people of Northern Ireland.
I just want to address another tweet that you put out, Ben. And I quote, "The EU has bullied our government into submission. They need to stop cowering in a corner. Our financial services can thrive even with a totally hostile EU. All we need is leadership."
Absolutely. So the purpose of that tweet, and I wrote an article which accompanied the tweet, basically said that, when we did the trade deal with the EU, we gave them everything they wanted. We gave them full access to our markets, and we're one of the biggest clients in the world. We gave them our fish. We're committed to paying into their European Defence Fund. We committed to their ridiculous net zero by 2050. We committed to the European Court of Human Rights Act. We gave them everything they wanted. But we forgot, or we neglected, to protect something that's very important to the United Kingdom, which is our financial services industry. And remember that 80% of our GDP is services, and a significant proportion of that is financial services. But we didn't cover that off. And we took the EU's word that they would negotiate in good faith after the trade and cooperation agreement had been executed to settle an arrangement on financial services. But this month, in the last few days, they've told us that they will not recognize the UK as having equivalent regulatory environment to the EU. And what that means is that firms in the UK can't freely trade in the European Union. The EU recognizes equivalence with the US, Canada, Australia, Hong Kong, and wait for it, Michael, Brazil. Okay, it accepts that the regulatory framework in Brazil is okay, but it won't accept that the regulatory framework in the UK is acceptable. So we know they're just being malign and they're just trying to damage our financial services. And instead of fighting back, what we see is our government timid in the extreme yet again. Rishi Sunak has unilaterally declared that EU firms operating in the UK can go on operating here as if nothing has changed. They can operate as branches, they can operate under EU regulatory framework. What we should now be doing is punching them right back on the nose. And we should be insisting that if they want to operate in the UK, they have to capitalize their companies. They have to turn them into companies and they have to capitalize them. They have to be subject to our regulatory framework. And that would push up the cost dramatically of them doing business in the UK, which is where they need to be to get access to funding. We should also remove this ridiculous EU provision, which obliges our banks and lending institutions to regard every EU member state as being zero risk. They're not zero risk. Greece is not a zero risk lending proposition. Italy is not a zero risk lending proposition. Our banks should be obliged to recognize what that risk is and price it appropriately. And that will send the cost of EU member state government bonds through the roof. So if they want to play rough with us, they want to accept Brazil as being acceptable, but not London, fair enough. We'll be rough with them. We'll send the cost of their funding through the roof. And let's see where that gets them. In 5 seconds, Michael, they'll be back to the table. 5 seconds, they'll be back to the table. But in typical British timidity, we're not taking the fight to them.
I want to address another tweet that you put out, this time in terms of the global outlook. You tweeted, the future of UK trade is not with the sclerotic EU. It lies in the rapidly growing markets of East Asia, Africa and South America. You say that Liz Truss, of course, the UK Trade Secretary, is doing a great job. And that should embolden Boris Johnson to turn his back on the WA and the TCA. Can you elaborate a bit more on that, please?
Yeah, well, the growth areas in the world are not, the growth area in the world is not the European Union. It's a shrinking component. Every year, its proportion of global GDP shrinks. And I think in 10 years' time, it's forecast to be only about 15% of global GDP. The engine of growth, the engine of the European economy is Germany. And their principal product is internal combustion engines, which is rapidly going out of fashion. So the European Union has a real issue with its own economic outlook. Where we need to be, where our financial services need to be going, where our trade and goods sector needs to focus, is on the rapidly growing markets of Eastern Asia, Africa, and South America. And if you look at, Japan, Australia, Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Korea, you look at those countries, they're growing at about 6 or 7% per annum. The EU is bumping along in recessionary territory and has done for the last 15 years. So where do you want to trade? You want to trade where the money is, and the money ain't in Europe. People talk about the gravity of proximity when it comes to trade, and that's why we should worry about the EU, because it's so close to us, and trade generally happens with your next door neighbor. But actually, a few weeks ago, China replaced France as Germany. It went ahead of France as one of Germany's biggest trading partners, and China is obviously at the other end of the world. Those kind of notions of the gravity of proximity, historic, they don't really apply anymore, you know, in modern times with the ability to travel the way we can travel, give or take COVID. So, you know, this notion that we should be fixated with trying to placate the European Union and hang on to its coat strings, its apron strings, for fear of, you know, what might happen if we don't. It's a Hilaire Belloc sort of cautionary tale, but it doesn't have any application in reality. We need to do what the United Kingdom has always done so well: leave our shores, go to far-flung places, and be independent, nimble traders, you know, which we've done for centuries.
Well, Ben, look, lots going on at the moment. I'm sure we'll speak again soon. Great to get your insight. Ben Habib, thanks for joining me on the channel again today.
Thank you.
Cheers.